This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini, sharing the stories of immigrants who came to the U.S. for a better life and accomplished or even exceeded their own expectations reminds all of us where we came from. Peggy Morales does that in her book, A Tapestry Woven, the story of her greatest inspiration, her great-grandmother, who took care of her from the time she was a baby. A story that begins in Mexico, where her great-grandmother was abandoned as a child.
It was her life. She was abandoned herself with her siblings at a very young age. And this was in Mexico. It was her survival, the stories that she used to tell me. And I was a very inquisitive child. I was left there with her and the family when I was 3 months old. And there was just this connection with her. But anyway, it was her survival, her unspeakable losses. And she had a deep faith that really never faltered, and her deep sense of love of family. It was just uncanny. And the inspiration basically for writing the book is I wanted to write the book because I wanted my family and the future generations to know her. Very young ages, they were looking for work, and there were these two elderly women that basically gave my Mama Luz a job. And they are the ones that taught her life skills. And the life skills that she got are the life skills that she taught me. And she kept telling me stories throughout our lives about the two little old ladies. And she says, I will never forget them. And she never did. She repeated stories about them.
What did she end up doing with her life?
She had a total of 16 children, and they all died at various stages. And they traveled from Mexico north, went to El Paso, and then they traveled into New Mexico. She was a housewife. And I mean, the life skills that she had were amazing. When I came into her life, she taught me all the skills that one would need, growing up. However, even that she was not an educated woman, she knew how important it would be, even after she had all her children, because I was the last child there, that it would be important for me to have cultural things in my life. She sent me to have music lessons, singing lessons, dance lessons. She paid out of her meager pension checks. When you are exposed to these cultural things, it teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you about competition. It gives you a sense of you can be as good as you want to be. You can be as good as you need to be. And you don't have to depend on anybody. You can be your own person. You don't have to be subservient to anybody.
You can blaze your own trail, so to speak.
Yes, she gave me a good foundation and set me on a good path. And I reached out to the Albuquerque, New Mexico Hispanic Cultural Center, and they're going to be working with me to do something with the Hispanic Cultural Center.
Perfect place for your book, Peggy. Thank you. A pastor of an African Methodist Episcopal church, the oldest black church in Oregon, Terry McRae is no stranger to writing or dealing with people who think they've lost their power. In her book, Stay Out of Grown Folks' Business, we learn no matter what happens in life, power is only lost if you give it up.
I just imagine in dealing with people, some of the issues that people go through, especially women and women of color who have had stories to tell, but no one really to tell it to, or who have been victims of wrong choices or victims of the system. And sometimes how our families have not been whole or healthy experiences. And it journeys with Eva Baby Girl Solomon, main character, from her humble beginnings during the post-World War II era in Pinecrest, a small town in Mississippi, to a cell in a Northern California woman's correctional facility in the 80s, and all other places lived in between as she reconciles her past with her present. Triggered by You Never Had a Childhood, Eva, as an experienced Black woman with years and scars on her spirit, begins a quest to discover the motive behind the remark. Eva finds illumination, encountering life's myriad of highs and lows, and ultimately seizes the power of her own voice to speak her truth. On the journey, Eva reclaims love and laughter and proclaims new life, and traveling with her, the reader will too.
How does she wind up in a correctional facility?
She killed someone, a woman, and it probably would have been considered second degree murder or accidental homicide. But because of her strong will and her determination not to have someone speak for her, she wanted justice as opposed to doing it on the terms of society, and she ended up in jail. The takeaway from this is that you can discover your own voice, use your voice to change your world, your community, your surroundings. You can be empowered. And I guess that is described in my dedication. And I say the book is dedicated to strong and courageous women, bold enough to tread a path towards self discovery, and brave enough to share the details of their journey. Their stories have restored hope, empowered, nurtured, and inspired us, and the essence of their spirit is the tie that binds us. So, in her story, someone reading it, once they look at all she's gone through, overcome, and although in captivity, if you will, still has freedom. And I like a quote that Alice Walker, she has always contended that the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Okay? And this woman sitting in jail, reflecting on what got her there, is the source of her strength. And it's empowering.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Terry. Jaylene Doyle always wrote and told stories, particularly when her kids were little. Her dad inspired her to write Sammy and the Angels 11 years ago. And, I'm always interested in why authors sometimes hesitate to publish.
I guess we're all of fear of possibly rejection or wanting to be accepted or if it's good enough. So I held on to it, held it very close to my heart, and would tell this story. And then I just decided that it was time to publish. My mom had dementia, and she passed away just this last August. And 2 years prior to that, I watched her change, and there was a grieving process that happened with me, with my mom, watching little bits of her go. And one day I just thought, I've got to do something. And I did it. And then my mom passed away, and the book was actually published in press release just January, and it felt like everything was in alignment. My dad, he died 33 years ago, and he always was telling us stories. And I realized just lately that he told us stories to divert us from something that was not so fortunate or a disappointment. And I didn't realize until just recently that my storytelling with my own daughters came from that. This particular story was inspired when my daughters were small, and I was always running late, and I realized I was creating some anxiety in my daughters. And I looked at them, and I thought, oh my goodness, there must be a story behind this. So one particular day, we were on our way to school, and we were running late, and there was a train. And the girls said, Mom, now we're really going to be late. we're so lucky. We're so blessed to be able to be stopped by this train, because this is how angels go from one place to another. And they got real quiet, and we continued on our way to school. And now they tell that story to their kids. So this particular book is about Sammy, first day of school. He is a little nervous in his tummy. His mama is a little nervous as well and bundles him up just in case the weather changes. So he's hot anyway, walking out to the bus, turns around to wave to his mom, feels a little boost, and he is face to face with an angel. And he turns around and says, "Thank you." Sits on the bus and sees the angels all day. And then the bus is stopped by a train. And Sammy sees the angels. No one else sees the angels. They continue on their way, and there's a detour. The bus was on the route to school. If it wasn't for the train, the tree would have landed right on top of the bus. And he looks out the windows and he sees the firefighters and the police, and there's angels all around, and he continues on to school. And of course is greeted by an angel, gets to his class for the first day, meets a friend named Jack. They become friends, and they both see angels. Draws a picture of Sammy and the angels. And on his way home, they decide to be friends. And the bus stops right in front of his house, greeted by his mom. And of course, there are angels at his house. And she asks if he had a good day. And of course, he said yes. And he looks outside and he says, "Do you see all the angels?" And she looks at the piece of paper and says, "The angels will always be with you." And the reason for this book, it actually is very emotional for me because of my belief in angels and what was instilled in me from my parents. The very last quote in this book is, "May an inconvenient pause happen in your life, just long enough for you to see there are angels with you and me."
That is so nice.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, but we're coming back right after this.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. What kid doesn't see imaginary monsters? I mean, think about all the creatures living in your closet and under your bed when you were a kid, and how the night played tricks on you. Patricia Castle Gordon's kids were no different, and that's what inspired her book, Monsters Have Nightmares Too, back in the 80s. And, you know, as we like to say here on the Page Publishing Book Club, better late than never.
Right. I illustrated it in the 90s, and I tried getting it published through other publishers, and it wasn't accepted, and a lot of publishing companies only publish a few children's books a year. So I gave it up, and I said, well, when I retire, because that's what I am, well, then I'll work on getting it published. And that's how I got into Page Publishing. It's about monsters that aren't real, the kind that kids normally will see or conjure up, that most of your fears are based on yourself, not something that's real. There's not a main character. It's different monsters, but basically it's one of my favorite ones that my son wanted me to draw was the little boy looking under the bed. And there's a tree at night that looks spooky. And so what that child will make that out to be when it's nighttime and it's dark. And so it goes on to explain that as you get older, you'll understand more of what makes you afraid.
So you're basically giving examples of things that might look scary, but then you show us that they really aren't.
Yes, exactly. And that they can create them in fun. It will show you that monsters are not really mean, though some may not agree.
And then I see a picture of a monster.
It looks a fun monster. He's not really a creepy monster. As you go into the book, you will see after the dark tree, you will see this horrible looking creature. And it actually is supposed to be what was conjured up from the tree. And that basically in the book it also explains that monsters sleep also. And when they sleep, they have nightmares of us.
How do we scare them?
Into their dreams. We scare them by, it can be by our presence, just whatever a child wants to think. One of the things that spurred me on with it is when I was a little girl, about 4 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night screaming that there was an alligator in my bed. And my stepdad came in and showed me that it was just a shadow of my doll's hand. I have shared the book with friends who had kids just to see what they would think. And kids just loved it. My granddaughter, who doesn't really like to be read to, had me read it 2 or 3 times.
What's better than that?
Oh, yeah. It's awesome to have them really like it. And when Page Publishing helped me set up my website, I did the header. So everybody loves that I designed.
What's the address?
Look up Patricia Castle Gordon, Facebook, and it's right there. I want to go to the library and be able to read it to kids, and I also want to go to my bookstore and give them one and hope that they will put it in there and that I will get some responses.
Nice. Do you have any other books coming?
I have ideas, and I need to sit down and be able to focus on them as to how I'm going to put it together.
Understood, Patricia. Very common problem. Thank you. A retired English teacher, Eugene Harvey, says his grandchildren put his verbal skills to the test during Saturday evening story time when he would make up tales to entertain them. Now he shares them with the rest of us in his book, My Adventurous Tales.
Because I have 11 grandchildren and only told the tales to 3, I wrote down the tales, fitted them, and sent them to the other 8. Yes, I have 4 different stories in the book. It's a series collection of books 1 to 4. I'm proud of the red, white, and blue. And that's how I named my characters. Redford is red, Wyatt, white, and Baloo, blue. Well, one of the stories is how they help their mother make jelly to enter a contest for the field day. They have a field day where they go to an island and jams and jellies are judged, and the mother wants to make pear cactus jelly. So the children have to go and climb down an old broken down bridge to the bottom where they can collect the fruit from the cactus, bring it back to her, and she processes it and makes jelly. And at the same time, while she's doing that, their neighbor whose son is their best friend, is in an archery contest. And he is an excellent archer, and he wins a prize for that. The mother wins a prize for her jelly. Then out of the prize money, she gives them a ride in a balloon, a gas balloon that goes way up in the air.
Oh, nice.
But that is only part of it because they have a danger at that point too. And you should read the book to find out what the danger is and how they overcome it. Another instance is when they are going to a springtime fair and they don't have enough money to take the ferry, so they go across a rickety old shaky bridge and go to the fair, have their fun, and on their way home, they are crossing the bridge and someone is chasing them, and they get halfway across the bridge breaks, and they do successfully get across, and the person who was chasing them falls into the river and has other infractions going on there, which is unpleasant for him. The stories have some mystery, they have adventure and danger, and there are thrills in some areas. In one of them, they show compassion for some other people, and by using their imagination, they try to solve different problems that occur. And there are some laughs in there, and there's a bit of learning. So, in one of the stories, there is an area where you can learn things about nature that is not ordinarily known. And the children matured, so did the stories. So the stories are good for adults, teenagers, children, anybody that likes to have a good time in reading and see how people solve problems and they get laughs out of it. There's mystery in there as well as the adventure.
All right, Eugene, thank you. A retired lineman for a power company, Tony Adams started writing when he was a sophomore in high school. He's written poems of all kinds and decided it was time to publish some of them in his book, Is One Poem Enough?
Well, there are factual poems that actually really happen, and then there are some poems that are true, but I had to add stuff in to make them a little bit more entertaining. Then there's some fiction ones, things that I had as a dream mostly, and I remember a lot of dreams, but one of them was an inspiration by a co-worker. He says, write a poem about a hat. So I picked out a Western style hat and made a poem out of it, and it turned out to be pretty successful. When I was a lineman, I was a repairman, and the repairman has his own truck. And so I was driving up the interstate, and there happened to be a shoe alongside the fog line, and it just sat there really close to the highway. Traffic was going by, and the traffic missed this shoe. And so it's only 5 verses I wrote about it, and it's called That Old Shoe. It goes, I saw a shoe at the edge of the highway last year. It sat there alone every day. Its cars passed by so near. Each day as I passed, I could see signs of its wear. It had to endure adverse weather as it sat there. The sole curled up and the laces were tattered. I knew if a car hit it, it surely would be shattered. I really didn't know how long it would last. I knew that one day it would be a thing of the past. Litter patrol signs were up, and somehow I knew they soon would be coming to pick up that old shoe. And they came and they picked it up, and the analogy of it is end of life. So,
Do you ever get to read your poems in public?
well, yes. As a matter of fact, there was a cafe where they had poetry reading. And so I went there, signed up to read. And shoot, I read several of my poems in there with a bunch of other poets. And it was well received. And then this pandemic hits, and Sue's Java Cafe didn't survive.
Oh,
Yeah, couldn't afford the rent where they were at. I was really kind of sorry to hear that.
why do you say is one poem not enough?
Well, I believe that if there's poets out there or people that like poetry, would one poem not be enough for them? Or is one poem not enough for me? I created this book so that I could inspire other writers. If they read these poems, why then if somebody should write a successful poem, why then even if one poem is written, I feel like I've accomplished something, inspiring someone. I put the book into a store where there is local people, craftspeople that their stuff inside the store and they sell them. And right next door is a magazine company. They publish a Northern California magazine, and it's free. The advertisers are the ones that pay for the magazine, and then it's distributed around, and the book gets advertised in there. I've had a couple of stories in there. Anyway, the book is in the store that's next door. It gets exposed there.
That's great, Tony. Maybe, you'll find another cafe. You never know. Thanks. Aquarius Knight decided he didn't want to be a private contractor with a delivery company forever. He does a lot of driving, and he got to thinking, it would be nice to do something to save the planet. That's what inspired him to write Nature's Revenge, about 3 college students who have to deal with an alien.
So the story is that an alien is going to return to Earth after 4,000 years because his planet died. So when he thought that he was going to seek refuge on planet Earth, come to find out it's being smothered by, carbon emissions and the waste that people are leaving behind from their cars and stuff. So he can smell all of that in the air, which leads him to needing to obtain a host in order to survive, because his species of alien is survival of the fittest, just like any other creature on this planet. But for somehow us as people, we have technology that maintains our survival at the expense of our planet as well. So the diabolical plan is not necessarily from the alien, but he knows that he's seen these events before, because now that he's there, now things are happening. Like, people's sins are manifesting into being, and these sins, they prey on people and they prey on divine individuals, such as 2 of the college students I'm referring to. What he's letting them know is that the reason why these things are happening is because that there is an ancient tome that they used to obtain back when he was there 4,000 years ago, that has been activated, which is letting them know that the world is going to change suddenly, and it's building up to where all of these experiences that are going on is because of this book that needs to be given to a set of twins that are human, that are in human form. It's going to be 3 books. So far, I have the first book out. The second book, I'm like halfway through, but I didn't want to continue to write it if my first book was a flop. But yes, I do intend to have 3 books altogether. So it's going to be Nature's Revenge, Nature's Recovery, and Nature's Resurrection. So the way I promoted it is that I have, a group of friends. They help me. One giving me my own book signing that they also post to their friends as well to try to, help me promote the book even further.
Nice.
I do have a Facebook page. Oh, I actually have an Instagram account for the page for the book itself. So all I have to do is just look up hashtag Nature's Revenge 2021.
All right, hashtag Nature's Revenge 2021. Good enough, Aquarius. And wow, we're out of time. That is a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Download that podcast at 710WOR.com. Thanks for listening. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.